Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen, and we know we have many Aussie followers and subscribers here at WAM, and it's interesting to go into some of the things that affect Australia because obviously there's a world of trouble going on within the governmental and banking side of things, and of course with the manipulation of the markets in Australia, not unlike any other place really, but the fact is it's on a huge scale, and a recent article shows that Australia home prices rise most in 7 years amid bubble concerns. And of course, we've talked extensively about many real estate markets across the world and how these bubbles are ready to burst at any time. You can't put a time on it because fundamentals are off the table due to the level of manipulation, but we know it's going to happen. So John, go into this story.
Yeah, well, it's the same story as we've been telling about Canada, about Norway, about the United States and other places.
United Kingdom, yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly the same story. Like, we don't really need to repeat too much here. All we got to state is just the crazy numbers that's coming out. Of course, this is pushed, guys, by the central banks. They are the ones that create these bubbles because they want to make people feel enriched by the increase in value in their house.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that they're doing because the money is, the inflation is massive right now.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's only inflating two markets. It's the stock markets and the real estate markets. That's the two big markets that are getting highly, highly inflated right now. That's where all the money is moving. It hasn't moved out to the public in a massive scale, so we haven't seen huge inflation on prices and so on. But it's been stuck in the real estate markets and in the stock markets.
Well, and of course, we have to make the point that in many rural areas outside of the big cities in Australia, it's not exactly the same. But when we were talking about big cities like Sydney and others, I mean, what's going on in Australia is it's just further manipulation of the markets, and people can't even afford, in many cases, to even buy a house. They have to rent. They can't actually own property anymore. Can you go into what exactly is going on?
Well, the average, as an example, in March, the average increase in home values was 12.9%. And that's insane. That's insane. That's March. 1 month. And on the annual side, of course, like it's highly unstable. But on the annual side, Sydney, of course, very close to 19% in gain. We've seen Oslo, Vancouver, Toronto, London being very similar to this. And it's pushed by this agenda of cheapening the currency and then have a cheap interest rate. So you increase, the amount of people that gets into the debt because that's what fuels the system. And as you have people getting into unsustainable housing debt, because your house is not an asset, of course, this, becomes worse and worse and worse and
becomes
worse.
A circle,
Yeah, because people have been told that their house is an ATM, that, you can constantly borrow against your house. And that's what keeps the system alive, too, is the inflationary state of people constantly, getting into more mortgaging on their house. They're just squeezing the loan to values like right up there, keeping any value left to what their mortgage is. And they're just going on, vacations, just doing whatever they want with it.
And are we seeing a lot of the banking kind of CDO, collateralized debt obligations?
Yeah. So what's happening here, and of course we don't have the exact numbers, it's very hard to find how much money has been collateralized of all this, of course. Now we know that there's mass amounts of derivatives getting issued every day, so most likely a lot of these loans out there on these houses in England and Norway, wherever it is, and of course here in Australia that we're talking about, they might have been collateralized where they've just been packaged into a package and then sold off to somebody else that holds it.
So a few good deals mixed in with a whole bunch of bad deals, basically.
Yeah, what they've done, the old scheme is, of course, they, credit rate whoever is the top tier, the few good mortgages, and it looks like a AAA investment. And then, of course, they get them to sell them to all these pension funds because pension funds has only invest in high-rated investments. So what they do is they push this where they have all this crap basically laying around underneath in this collateralized debt obligation, and then they use their credit default swap to insure themselves against the failure of these so they can make a ton load of money on selling crappy investments, and then of course benefit from the failure on top of that.
And of course, if you're absolutely insane and ready for an insane risk, yeah, you can probably make a bit of money off of the massive inflation on value. Yeah. But at the same time, you can lose everything. I mean, the bubble is ready to burst at any time, and people have to realize that when you manipulate and manipulate and manipulate and create artificial markets, eventually that bubble's going to burst. And John, go into what will happen if that bubble bursts anytime soon. In general, what will happen when that bubble bursts?
The problem, first of all, is that there's no real economy left standing. There's a massive deflationary state. We looked in the United States, all of these malls and everything shutting down, Macy's, Sears, all these big shopping companies. They say it's Amazon, it's Amazon. Yeah. Well, there's an underlying thing there which is called the demographic cliff. Like, all these baby boomers have stopped spending a lot of money, so there's not enough consumer spending to keep the consumer economy alive anymore. And of course, there is a demographic cliff. Like, all the people are now aging on an average, so there's less and less people being able to contribute into these systems that they created. And there's people are leery, the younger generation are leery to actually go out there and buy a house. That's what they really want us to do, is just go and buy these houses so they could keep on inflating the market, because the Keynesians need, of course, the debt to inflate, because their debt that they borrow becomes cheaper. And I had a discussion with this guy, I'm not going to mention a name. He was saying that, we need, businesses and everybody to get into debt so we could, keep the system going. That's the problem. It's the debt that's the problem. What if you could just, not have to go into a whole bunch of debt? Why do we have to get into all this massive amounts of debt? I know business owners that run their life, they're very successful, they have zero amount of debt, and they're innovating, they're creating jobs and so on. You don't need a massive amount of debt floating around to save the system. And of course, they believe that the government should issue a whole bunch of debt and spend it into the economy, so you grow the economy. That's all they care about, is growing the economy so they can make more taxable income to then pay off the more amounts of debt that they accumulated. Yeah. This is all all the government pushing this agenda behind it all, because they're scared to death about what's going to happen when this deflationary pressure comes in and stops it. What's going to happen is it's going to deflate like crazy. Just wait and see now what's going to happen when just a couple more years. It's just going to be a massive deflationary state, and then they're going to panic and have helicopter drops of money, cashless societies, negative interest rates.
World
all
currency,
of it is going to be implemented as they panic, because the markets as they are should have been faltering, and they're not, because they're pushing all this money, cheap money, into the real estate markets in Australia and to debt in Australia. It's now, of course, the private debt to GDP is one of the highest in the world as well. Top 10, 222% of their total GDP. So it's over double of what they actually produce that they have in debt. So it's just a massive debt-based system. They're trying to, create growth with debt. But the problem is you're creating less and less and less growth with the more and more debt you print.
And of course, war is a prerogative of theirs in order to also compensate. There's all sorts of different things that they can do that are very dangerous to individuals, and that affects people down under over in Australia, and it affects people all across the world, and it needs to be noted, it needs to be understood. But John, kind of just quickly go into how people can keep themselves safe in Australia in this inevitable bubble burst.
Well, first of all, you can invest in real estate if you know what you're doing. You gotta know what you're doing. That's the problem. Most people that are investing in real estate have zero clue what they're doing. They're flipping houses, some of them that are right at the edge of what's possible. They're hoping that that value will go up all the time. So you're getting a whole bunch of people that flips these houses with massive, close to they're just highly leveraged. And suddenly you get a drop in price. They get crushed. They need to understand, you can invest in real estate if you know what you're doing. There's so much stuff you can go into to understand how to do it properly. But of course, the most important part is, keep yourself free and out of the monetary system. Banks are preparing to take your money at any given time.
Sound money outside of centralization.
Sound money outside of centralization. The gold and silver. We of course got to make sure that you keep yourself self-sufficient and are not dependent on a government when different matters comes into play and these markets are freezing up and collapsing. You need to be self-dependent, because if not, you're going to sit there and be like Venezuelans that are stuck with, a number and a fingerprint that they have to give in order to get whatever amount of food that the government will allow them to get.
Yeah, it eventually can't come down to that. So just finishing it off, I really wish you guys luck down under. And also just closing it off, also down under is our links for GoFundMe and Patreon, and we can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, due to the fact, of course, that we at this moment are being vastly censored by YouTube. We're being demonetized. 3 out of 4 videos are being demonetized, and we can't keep this operation going without you. And further from that, we also have Bitcoin, our address for Bitcoin, in the description and the comments, as well as on the screen, where you can scan if you please. And also, come on out to the Red Pill Expo. We will leave a link below in the description and the comments as well for that, where you can meet people like G. Edward Griffin, Ty Bollinger, Robert Kiyosaki, Lord Monkton. You could see people like James Corbett speak, all these incredible people, and we really hope to see you there in June in Montana. It's going to be an incredible event, and you won't want to miss it. So thanks, John, for going into this for us, and we'll be back at you with much more. This is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.